You're stuck in traffic, drumming your fingers on the steering wheel. The car next to you has someone inside, completely absorbed in their own world. Maybe they're singing along to a song you can't hear, or replaying an argument from yesterday, or thinking about someone they miss. And suddenly it hits you. That person has an entire universe inside their head. A childhood full of scraped knees and birthday cakes. Dreams they've never told anyone. A favorite smell that brings back memories you'll never know. A whole story as long and complicated as yours. This moment of realization has a name. It's called Sonder. And it's just one of those feelings that exists in the space between thoughts. Too specific for most languages. Too real to ignore. Today we're diving into the emotional territories that don't have clear maps. The feelings that live in the gaps. There's a specific kind of homesickness that has nothing to do with geography. You might be sitting in your childhood bedroom, everything exactly as you left it, and still feel completely displaced. The Welsh have a word for this, hiraeth. It's a longing for home that goes beyond missing a place. It's missing a version of yourself, a time that felt simpler, a moment when everything made sense in a way it doesn't anymore. I felt this driving through neighborhoods where I used to live. The houses are still there, the streets unchanged, but the person who walked those sidewalks feels like someone I used to know rather than someone I used to be. Hiraeth isn't just nostalgia with a fancy name. Nostalgia has a sweetness to it, a gentle pull backward. Hiraeth has teeth. It's the recognition that some doors, once closed, don't reopen. The summer when you were 17 and everything felt possible. The early months of a relationship when the future stretched out like an open road. The version of your family that existed before time and distance and small disappointments shifted everyone into different shapes. You can revisit these places physically, but the emotional landscape has been redrawn. The hiraeth kicks in when you realize that home isn't just a location you can return to. Sometimes it's a feeling you've outgrown, a version of yourself you can't go back to being. The bittersweet truth is that growing up often means leaving parts of yourself behind in places you can't revisit. Not because they've changed, but because you have. Your phone buzzes and their name appears on the screen. That little rush of dopamine shouldn't make sense. You've known this person for maybe 3 weeks, had a handful of conversations, and yet somehow they've taken up residence in your brain. You catch yourself checking their social media, reading too much into response times, crafting messages you ultimately don't send. This isn't just attraction. A psychologist named Dorothy Tenov studied this phenomenon in the 1970s and gave it a clinical name, limerence. What makes limerence different from regular interest is its involuntary nature. You're not choosing to think about this person constantly. Your brain is hijacked, running the same loops over and over. The uncertainty is actually the fuel. Your nervous system is trying to solve a puzzle, and every interaction becomes a clue. A quick response to a text becomes evidence of mutual interest. A delayed reply gets analyzed for hidden meanings. The person becomes a slot machine your brain can't stop pulling. The moment the uncertainty resolves, either they're interested or they're not, the obsessive quality usually fades, which tells you something important about what was really happening. You weren't falling in love with a person. You were falling in love with a question mark. The person was almost secondary to the mystery they represented. Limerence reveals something uncomfortable about human psychology. We're wired to be more interested in what we can't have than what we can. The chase activates reward centers in our brains that actual connection sometimes can't match. It's why some people find themselves losing interest the moment someone becomes available. The thrill was never about the relationship. It was about the not knowing. There's something deeply unsettling about a school during summer vacation. The hallways that should be filled with the chaos of teenagers are eerily quiet. Lockers stand empty, their doors slightly ajar. The cafeteria tables are stacked and pushed against the walls. Everything is exactly where it should be, except for the people who give the space its purpose. This feeling has a name: canopsia. It's the eerie atmosphere of places that were designed for crowds but now sit empty. What makes canopsia different from just being in an empty room is the weight of absence. You can feel the missing energy, the conversations that should be happening, the life that should be filling these spaces. It's not just emptiness. It's emptiness with a memory. I've experienced this walking through airports late at night, when the gates are mostly closed and the usual rivers of travelers have dried up to a trickle. The infrastructure of human movement is all there, the signs and seating and departure boards, but without the people, it feels post-apocalyptic. The same thing happens with abandoned websites, social media profiles that haven't been updated in years. The framework is intact, but the person who gave it meaning is gone. The structure remains as a kind of digital ghost town. Canopsia forces you to confront how much of what we call reality is actually just people moving through spaces, giving them purpose through presence. Without us, these places don't just become empty, they become strange. A reminder that so much of what feels permanent and important only exists because we collectively agree to show up and pretend it matters. The rain starts as a gentle tapping and builds into a proper downpour. Outside, the world becomes hostile, uninviting, impossible to navigate comfortably. Inside, something shifts in your nervous system. The contrast between the chaos outside and your warm, dry sanctuary creates a specific kind of peace. This is chrysalism, named after the protective casing that shelters a caterpillar while it transforms into something else. It's that feeling of being pleasantly sealed off from the world, by weather, by circumstance, by choice. What makes chrysalism work is the element of contrast. The storm outside isn't just background noise. It's an active ingredient in the comfort you feel inside. Your brain registers the difference between where you are and where you could be, and the relief is almost physical. There's permission in bad weather. Permission to cancel plans, to stay put, to not be productive. The rain becomes an excuse to just exist in a space without the pressure to do anything with your time. I think we crave chrysalism because so much of modern life feels exposed, always available, constantly connected. The idea of being genuinely unreachable, even temporarily, has become almost luxurious. When was the last time you had no choice but to be exactly where you are, with no expectation that you should be anywhere else? Storms force a kind of presence that we've otherwise optimized out of our lives. The chrysalis isn't just about shelter from weather. It's about shelter from the endless demands of a world that's always asking you to be somewhere else, doing something different. Used bookstores have an atmosphere you can't replicate. It's not just the smell of aging paper or the randomness of the selection. It's something more subtle, more emotional. Every book on those shelves has already lived a life. Someone bought it new, maybe read it cover to cover, maybe left it half-finished on a nightstand for months. They highlighted passages that meant something at the time, left receipts as bookmarks, dog-eared pages at moments that resonated. And then, for whatever reason, they let it go. Divorce, death, moving, changing tastes. Now it's here, waiting for someone new. This feeling has a name: Velacore. It's the quiet melancholy of thrift stores and secondhand shops, places where objects that used to belong to someone's life now exist in limbo, waiting to belong to someone else's. There's a gentleness to this sadness. It's not tragic, just a reminder that everything passes through different hands, accumulates different stories, serves different purposes across time. The Velacore hits when you realize you're surrounded by small histories you'll never fully know. The coffee mug with a chip that someone learned to drink around. The jacket that kept someone warm through a particularly hard winter. the photo album, filled with faces you don't recognize, but who were once the center of someone's world. These objects are survivors. They've outlasted relationships, moved across cities, adapted to new purposes. In a world obsessed with newness, there's something profound about choosing things that have already proven their worth by existing, by being cared for, by being worth keeping, even if only temporarily. You're at a work party, making conversation, laughing at the right moments, doing everything socially correct. Nothing is wrong, exactly. People are friendly, you're holding up your end of the interactions. But there's this persistent feeling that you're performing a role rather than being yourself. Like you're speaking a language fluently, but with an accent that marks you as not quite from around here. This is monochopsis, the subtle but persistent feeling of being out of place. It's different from shyness or social anxiety. You're not scared or uncomfortable in any obvious way. You're just operating at a frequency that doesn't quite match the room. The conversations feel slightly offbeat. The humor lands differently. The things that energize other people leave you feeling drained in ways you can't explain. What makes monochopsis particularly difficult is that it's hard to fix through effort. You can learn the social scripts, master the small talk, but the fundamental mismatch remains. It's like being left-handed in a right-handed world. You can adapt, but it requires constant micro-adjustments that other people don't have to think about. The quiet hope underneath monochopsis is that somewhere there's a room where fitting in would be effortless, where your natural frequency would match the group's, where being yourself wouldn't require translation. Most of us spend significant portions of our lives looking for that room, that group, that place where we can stop performing and just exist. Sometimes we find it. Sometimes we create it. Sometimes we realize that the feeling of not quite fitting is just part of being human in a world that's too complex for any of us to perfectly match. A friend texts asking if you want to grab dinner. They haven't done anything wrong, you enjoy their company, and you have nothing else planned. But something in you reflexively closes off. You make an excuse, say you're busy, put off making concrete plans. Then you spend the evening alone, which is technically what you chose, but it doesn't feel good either. The Germans have a word for this, Mauerbauer-Traurigkeit, roughly translated as the wall builder's sadness. It's the urge to push people away even when you don't really want to, followed by the particular loneliness that comes from getting exactly what you asked for. What makes this different from just needing alone time is the involuntary quality. It feels more like a reflex than a decision. Someone reaches out, and before you can think about whether you want to see them, you've already started building the wall. The explanation you give yourself might be that you're tired, that you need space, that you're not good company right now. But underneath, there's often something more complicated. A fear of being seen too clearly, of having to perform connection when you're not sure you know how. The wall feels protective in the moment, but the loneliness that follows is specific and sharp. It's not the clean loneliness of genuinely wanting to be alone. It's the messy loneliness of having put yourself in isolation and then regretting it. The cruelest part is that the very act of building walls makes it harder to tear them down. Each time you choose distance over connection, the pattern gets stronger. The muscle memory of withdrawal becomes the default response to intimacy. Breaking the cycle requires noticing the moment before the wall goes up and choosing differently, even when every instinct is telling you to retreat. You find yourself scrolling through old photographs online, images from the 1970s or 80s. The colors are slightly faded, the fashion is dated, but something about the pace of life visible in these frozen moments pulls at you. People gathered around kitchen tables without phones in their hands. Streets without the visual clutter of modern signage. A world that seems simpler, more connected, more authentic than the one you actually live in. This feeling has a name: anemoia, nostalgia for a time you've never known. The logical part of your brain knows this doesn't make sense. You weren't there. You have no actual memories of these moments. Every era has its problems, its struggles, its complexity that doesn't show up in curated photographs. But the longing is real anyway. What you're seeing in these images isn't really the past. It's the edited version, the highlight reel that survived because someone thought it was worth preserving. The arguments, the boredom, the ordinary frustrations didn't get photographed. The genuine hardships of different eras got filtered out through time and selective memory.
So what are you actually missing?
Probably simplicity, or maybe just the illusion of it. The past becomes a convenient place to project fantasies about how life could be different, slower, more intentional, less complicated by technology and choice and the exhausting abundance of modern life. Anemoia reveals something about our relationship with the present. Instead of engaging with the actual complexity of now, it's easier to imagine that somewhere else, somewhen else, life was more manageable. The past becomes a refuge from the overwhelming nature of the current moment. But here's the thing about that simpler time you're longing for. It never actually existed. Every generation has felt overwhelmed by the pace of change, nostalgic for a previous era that seemed more straightforward. The golden age is always one generation behind us. You're lying in bed, maybe looking out the window at the night sky, when it hits you with the force of a physical blow. You are one person. One tiny consciousness in a universe so vast that the numbers become meaningless. Right now, there are 8 billion other people on this planet, all living their own lives, having their own thoughts, dealing with their own problems. And beyond that, space stretches out in distances that make the size of Earth look like a grain of sand on an infinite beach. This moment of perspective has a name: oculism. The awareness of how small your experience is in the context of everything that exists. Most of the time, your brain protects you from this reality. It focuses on what's immediately relevant: your job, your relationships, the conversation you had yesterday that you keep replaying. This tunnel vision isn't a flaw. It's necessary for functioning. But occasionally, the tunnel opens up and you see the full scope. And it's simultaneously terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it makes your problems feel simultaneously enormous and completely insignificant. That embarrassing thing you said at work, the fight you had with your partner, the decision you're agonizing over, they matter intensely to you and barely register in the grand scheme of existence. Liberating because if nothing really matters on a cosmic scale, then maybe the pressure comes off. Maybe you can stop taking yourself so seriously. Maybe the catastrophic thinking that keeps you awake at night is just your mind struggling with perspective. Some people find oculism freeing, like being given permission to worry less about things that won't matter in 100 years. Others find it existentially unsettling, like the ground temporarily disappearing beneath their feet. Most of us experience both reactions, sometimes within the same moment. Every choice you make closes off dozens of others. The city you choose to live in means giving up all the other cities you could have explored. The career path you follow means not following countless alternatives. The person you commit to means not being with anyone else. The life you're building exists at the cost of all the other lives you could have lived. This awareness has a name: onism. The frustration of being stuck in just one body, living just one timeline, when you can imagine so many other possibilities. The internet has probably made onism worse. You've never had such easy access to evidence of all the lives you're not living. Every corner of human experience is one scroll away. You can watch documentaries about people living completely different kinds of lives, read about places you'll probably never visit, see photographs of experiences you'll never have. The abundance of choice that modernity offers creates its own kind of suffering. Previous generations had fewer options, but perhaps less awareness of what they were missing. Now you're constantly confronted with the infinite menu of existence, while being able to order only one dish. The math is cruel. More possibilities means more things to regret not choosing.
What makes onism particularly painful is that it's based on a fantasy. The lives you imagine you could be living exist in your mind without the friction, boredom, and complexity that would come with actually living them. The person you imagine you'd be if you'd moved to that other city, taken that other job, made that other choice. They're always more interesting than you actually are. Because imaginary lives don't include traffic jams, difficult coworkers, or the thousand small compromises that make up any real existence. Still, the feeling persists. Somewhere out there are versions of yourself living in ways you can barely imagine, and you'll never meet them. That person cutting you off in traffic has a whole story you'll never know. The cashier who seems distracted might be thinking about a phone call they received this morning. The woman walking her dog past your window is carrying decades of experiences, relationships, losses, small victories that have shaped who she is in ways that would take hours to explain, and that you'll never have the chance to understand. Sonder is the realization that everyone around you has a complete inner life.
But it's more than just an intellectual understanding. It's the moment when this abstract knowledge becomes emotionally real, when you feel the weight of all those untold stories pressing against your awareness.
It usually hits in crowded places where the sheer number of individual lives becomes overwhelming. An airport terminal where hundreds of people are traveling to places you'll never go for reasons you'll never understand. A city street where every face represents a consciousness as complex and real as your own. Your brain tries to process the magnitude and simply can't. The scale is too vast, the information too dense. So it gives up and retreats back to the comfortable fiction that you're the main character and everyone else is just background. But once you've felt Sonder genuinely, something changes. You start noticing the signs of hidden depth in people around you. The way someone stares out a bus window, lost in thought about something you'll never know. The particular way a person laughs that suggests years of shared jokes with friends you'll never meet. The worn-down look in someone's eyes that speaks to experiences you can only guess at. Sonder is both humbling and overwhelming.
Humbling because it reminds you that your perspective is just one among billions. Overwhelming because it suggests that everywhere you look, there are entire universes of human experience that remain forever inaccessible to you. There are feelings that exist in the spaces between words, in the pauses between thoughts, in the gap between what we experience and what we can explain. These emotions don't fit neatly into the categories our language provides. So they live in a kind of emotional underground, shaping our experience without proper names or recognition. What's strange is how universal these unnamed feelings are. You can describe Sonder to someone who's never heard the word, and they'll immediately know what you mean. The same with Hiraeth, with chrysalism, with any of these psychological territories that exist beyond the borders of common vocabulary. This suggests something important about human experience. We're all navigating the same emotional landscape, but we're doing it with maps that have significant blank spaces. The words we do have, love, fear, joy, sadness, they're necessary but insufficient. They're like primary colors, when what we actually experience is more like the full spectrum of light, subtle gradations and combinations that resist simple classification.
Maybe that's why these unnamed feelings resonate so powerfully when we finally encounter words for them.
It's not that we're learning something new, it's that we're finally able to point to something that was already there. Like discovering that the weird ache you sometimes feel has been felt by enough people that someone, somewhere, decided it deserved a name.
The act of naming these feelings changes them somehow. Once you know the word Sonder, you start noticing when you're experiencing it. Once you understand chrysalism, you can recognize the specific comfort of being sheltered from storms. The vocabulary doesn't create the experience, but it does make it more visible, more real, more worthy of attention. Most of our emotional vocabulary was developed for simpler times, when human experience was less complex, less connected, less aware of its own contradictions. We use the same words for feelings that our ancestors used, but we're applying them to situations they never could have imagined. The result is a kind of emotional inflation, where powerful words like love and hate have to cover too much territory, and subtle distinctions get lost in the translation. This is why discovering words like monocopsis or velocore feels like finding missing pieces of a puzzle. They describe aspects of modern experience that our inherited language never quite captured. The feeling of not fitting in despite doing everything right. The melancholy of objects that have outlived their original purpose. The longing for times and places that exist only in edited memories. What emerges from this exploration is a picture of human consciousness that's more nuanced than our everyday language suggests. We're not just happy or sad, interested or bored, lonely or connected. We're experiencing dozens of subtle emotional states simultaneously, most of which we never learn to identify or discuss. This emotional complexity isn't a problem to solve, it's a reality to acknowledge. The goal isn't to develop perfect vocabulary for every possible feeling. It's to recognize that our inner lives are richer and stranger than we usually admit. That the person sitting next to you on the bus isn't just tired or distracted. They might be experiencing any number of these unnamed states, carrying feelings as specific and real as Hiraeth or chrysalism or Mauerbauer-Traurigkeit. The unnamed feelings remind us that being human is more complicated than we pretend. That consciousness is not a clean, well-organized space, but something more like a forest, full of paths that don't appear on any map, territories that exist beyond the reach of common language, experiences that can only be fully known by the person having them. If you have made it here to the end of this video with me, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow us every day. There's something powerful about recognizing that these feelings exist, that other people experience them, that you're not alone in navigating emotional territories that don't have clear maps. Let's keep exploring these hidden corners of human experience together. But here's what strikes me most about these unnamed feelings. They're not exotic or rare. They're everywhere, happening all the time, as common as breathing, but invisible until someone points them out. Right now, someone is experiencing Sonder in a crowded coffee shop. Someone else is feeling Hiraeth for a version of their childhood that exists more in feeling than in fact. Someone is pushing people away despite wanting connection. Someone is longing for a home they can't return to. Someone is overwhelmed by the scale of everything, while simultaneously obsessed with tiny details that probably don't matter. The revolution isn't in the naming itself. It's in the recognition that these subtle emotional states are valid, real, worthy of attention. For too long, we've operated with an emotional vocabulary that's simultaneously too broad and too narrow. Too broad because words like depression or anxiety have to cover vast territories of human experience. Too narrow because it leaves out entire categories of feeling that don't fit medical or therapeutic frameworks. These unnamed feelings exist in the space between clinical psychology and everyday experience. They're not symptoms to treat or problems to solve. They're just part of the texture of being conscious in a complex world. Recognizing them doesn't make them go away, but it does make them feel less isolating. When you know that the weird emptiness you feel in abandoned places has a name, when you understand that the urge to push people away despite wanting connection is common enough that German speakers developed a word for it, when you realize that missing times you never lived is something humans have always done. You start to feel less like you're the only one struggling with these strange internal weather patterns. The territory we've mapped today doesn't have clear borders or obvious conclusions. These feelings exist in the spaces between certainty, in the gaps where language usually fails us. What they reveal is that human consciousness is far more nuanced than we typically acknowledge, full of subtleties that resist easy categorization or explanation. Maybe the real insight isn't about the specific feelings themselves, but about what their existence suggests. That we're all navigating emotional landscapes that are more complex than we usually admit. That the person next to you might be carrying any number of these unnamed states, feeling simultaneously too small and too large, missing places that don't exist and people who are still alive, building walls they don't really want, while longing for connections they're afraid to make. The unnamed feelings are a reminder that being human is not a solved problem. We haven't figured out consciousness, haven't mapped all the territories of inner experience, haven't developed adequate language for the full range of what it means to exist as a thinking, feeling being in a world that's simultaneously too large and too small for us to fully comprehend. What we have instead are these moments of recognition, these glimpses into the hidden complexity of everyday experience. The realization that everyone around you is carrying their own collection of unnamed feelings, their own private weather systems, their own attempts to make sense of existence with tools that were never quite designed for the job. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the goal isn't to name every feeling or solve every emotional puzzle, but simply to recognize that we're all in this strange territory together, all trying to navigate experiences that are too complex for the words we inherited, too real to ignore, too subtle for anyone else to fully understand. If this exploration resonated with you, follow our channel and share this with 5 people who might recognize themselves in these unnamed feelings. What other emotional territories do you think we should explore? Leave a comment and let me know what feelings you experience that don't have proper names.